What's happening, people? My name is Robbie, and today we're doing another reaction video. So I know it's Friday and the reaction videos are usually on a Monday, but I left this week's video too late and I've not finished editing it yet. So rather than putting that video out late, you're getting a reaction video today and you'll get the other video on Monday. Then next week, things will be back to normal. So on today's agenda, we are watching how Georges St-Pierre spent his first $1 million in the UFC, My First Million by GQ Sports. So if you're not familiar with the UFC or MMA in general, Georges St-Pierre is considered one of the greatest of all time. His record in the UFC is 26 wins, 2 losses and 0 draws, and he's just a very entertaining fighter to watch. The thing that caught my eye about this video was the fact that often you hear about things like UFC fighters and MMA fighters in general being underpaid, and you also hear about retired athletes going bankrupt. Presumably it's because they're never taught how to manage their money well and they think the money's going to keep coming forever. Take Mike Tyson for example. Mike Tyson was paid $30 million when he fought Evander Holyfield, and in total over his career he earned approximately $300 million. And he still filed for bankruptcy. So I'm very interested to hear how GSP spent his first $1 million that he earned through the UFC. Did he squander it? Did he invest it? Did he just buy lots of flashy stuff? There's only one way to find out. And just a little side note, I'm not sure how the audio is picking up on this, but my girlfriend's currently on a work call. So this little guy is in the room with me. And not only that, he has this disgusting little bone that he chews on. And as you can hear, it makes a racket. So I hope the audio doesn't pick up on that because the crunching noise is driving me insane. And one last point before we get into this video, we're currently 9 subscribers away from the April target. So if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and let's crack on.
My first fight ever, I got paid $1,100 because my opponent did not make the weight. Otherwise, I would have probably made even less because I got 30% of his purse. This is Georges St-Pierre and this is how I spend and save my first $1 million. I'm born in Montreal, Canada. I grew up in Saint-Isidore, the South Shore, where there's a lot of farms, not a lot of things going on. I got into karate at first because I was bullied at school. I didn't know what I wanted to become until I saw the first UFC on TV when I was a teenager. I was at school, but I was studying more because it was the right thing to do and because my parents pushed me. We didn't have a lot of money when I grew up. We were not poor either because I eat every day. I had money for school, but we were not wealthy. I had to work as security in a hip-hop nightclub as a garbage man. I always find time to train, working and studying in the same time. My number one priority, my number one goal is to become champion in Ultimate Fighting Championship. I fought a few times in local shows. I was undefeated at the time. My first big fight on the local scene, I was fighting a guy named Pete Spratt, a UFC veteran. He probably thought that he was just coming in to collect a paycheck and beat a young kid. I beat him, and that's when the door opened. The UFC recruit me. But at that time, I was not making enough money. Things were so tight to me that I couldn't afford to lose a fight. Because if I would have lost a fight, I would have been in debt. I remember my first fight in UFC, I made $3,000 to show, plus $3,000 to win. Then I had a second fight. I made $4,000 to show, plus $4,000 to win. Then I won that fight by knockout. That fight gave me a chance to go for the title right away.
So this is an example of what I was talking about with fighters being underpaid. I know $6,000 and $8,000 seems like a lot of money, but that's on a prerequisite that you win. Otherwise you're getting $3,000 or $4,000. Bear in mind that the UFC is the top of the game. That's like a Premier League football player playing for Manchester United and being paid £3,000 or £4,000. And that's not per week or per month. A lot of UFC fighters might fight 3 or 4 times in a year. So it's not a lot of money when you're at the top level. It's still not particularly a lot of money.
I had a chance to pursue my dream. I was studying and I was working as well. I had like a crazy schedule. I sat down with my parents and I told them, I said, listen, if things doesn't go well, I can always come back to school, But for the next session, I would like to just focus on training because I have a title shot and it's a big opportunity. And they agreed. That's when I started to train full time. I lost that fight, but it made me a much better fighter because I've learned a lot from that experience, and I rebound immediately after I finally get myself another title shot and I beat Matt Hughes. So I didn't have to go back to school, you know, go back to my old life. It was after my fight with John Fitch, I had to renew my contract, but I was champion and I was doing pretty well. So if I finished my contract, I had big offers waiting for me. So the UFC decided to renew my contract, and that's when I made my first million. I start working with financial advisor right away. First, because I'm a Canadian citizen, the tax report is very complicated. A lot of athletes, they make the mistake, they don't pay their taxes. So I made sure my structure was solid and all good. So a lot of athletes, I think they start right away to invest on luxury cars, stuff like that, jewelry, but I didn't do that. If I make money,
that's also a good point. I think that's why you hear about athletes going bankrupt, because they're not paying their taxes. And of all the people that you owe money to that you can avoid, the tax man isn't the one to avoid.
I need to make myself more competent to become better. I travel the world in order to gain more knowledge and become better. We talked about how I save my money. Now let's talk about how I spend it. The first thing I did is to clear all my parent debt, because my parents are the ones that support me since the beginning, you know? They took care of me as a baby, so that was the first thing I did. And when my mom called me crying with my dad on the line and say, "That's your money, we don't need your help," it was like one of the most beautiful, one of the best days of my life. My dad was my first martial art teacher, but he was too busy because he worked like maybe 60 hours a week for 30 years, you know, like he never stopped, he loved it. So he put me in a karate school. Paying my parents' debt, $50,000. Second thing that I bought, 2 cars for my parents. Japanese car, Toyota. They didn't really want to have something.
These are obviously the things that you like to see in these videos. There's no mention of a Ferrari or a Rolex or big fancy house yet. First things first, pay your parents' debt because they were the ones that raised you.
From me, but I forced them. Their car was broke all the time, and so I bought them a new car. And I want them to have a more luxury car, but they really didn't want it. Like they say, a good Japanese car will be something that will last for long. Like at that time, it was maybe 20, maybe 40,000. I would say $40,000 for my parent cars. I bought myself a car as well, Nissan Xterra. My vehicle was pretty bad, so I needed something safe.
So he's about 9% of his first million, and he's still treating his parents. So now it's paying the parents' debt and buying them cars. If he's buying cars for his parents, I would presume he's going to treat himself to a nice car as well, I hope.
And I always love SUV because in Montreal there's a lot of snowstorm. I also felt that in a SUV you're normally higher, so it's safer. My biggest fear is to get into a car crash and not being able to do what I love to do in my life. Nissan Xterra, $20,000. One of my sister, she wanted to have her master degree to take care of her family and be able to free herself to pursue her dream. And
I'm actually impressed by that one. He's made $1 million and he spent 20 grand on a car. I was expecting something a little bit more expensive. So GSP is obviously not dumb.
I gave her money like every few months to keep rolling, you know. Like now she's still doing, like she's doing it because she has kids, she's working and she's still doing it. $10,000 for my sister to get her master degree. To tell you the truth, like it would be very boring the show if I tell you the truth. Like my parent mortgage, my parent cars, my sisters, this. There is nothing else that I did on a short notice that, bang, you know, like I spread it, you know.
Another 10k towards his family. So that's now 100k on his family and 20k on himself. He's just a nice guy. What a nice guy.
Another $50,000 for my family. Gifts, expenses, to help them pursuing their dreams. So this $30,000 is all the friends that I helped who told me that they would pay me back, but they never did. So I help a lot of people, and I would say it's about $30,000.
What kind of gifts is he buying his family for 50k when he's already spent 100k on them? I wonder what gifts he bought them.
That I lost. It was okay. I helped them get out of bad situation, but the thing is, when you start making a lot of money, you get a lot of people coming at you. And everybody has problems. The easy way to get out of financial problems is to borrow money from someone you know, take it, and never give it back. If you lend money to someone, make sure you can afford to lose it.
So that's not ideal from his friends. Friends, if you borrow money from someone, pay the money back, especially if that friend is Georges St-Pierre, a trained killer.
I spent a lot of money traveling around the world to learn new fighting skills. I went to Thailand to learn Muay Thai. I went to Brazil to get better at Jiu-Jitsu. In New York to get better in Jiu-Jitsu as well. I went to Los Angeles train with Freddie Roach, a famous boxing coach, to get better boxing skills. France to work on my striking skills as well, because I knew I couldn't stay in Montreal here in order to grow and become a better fighter. I needed to learn expertise from others. And when I say traveling, I'm talking about training, classes, the food, airplane, the hotels. That's a lot, yeah. 200,000 now. Traveling for training, $200,000. It's hard to become champion, but it's even harder to stay champion because you become the target.
So that 200,000, it's sort of a reinvestment because he's a fighter and he's travelled to, like he says, Brazil, New York, France to train in different martial arts. So he's basically invested that 200k in himself to try and improve as a fighter, which is ultimately what's going to make him more money in the future. So still a smart investment, I think.
So that's why when I made my first $1 million, I spent a lot of money and I invested on myself, in order to get better. I bought myself a jacuzzi and a ice bath so I can switch. I believe it helped my body to recuperate better when I have very hardcore training session. I spent about, I would say, $15,000 to $20,000 on that. And it was a good investment, I have to say.
So this is still just a reinvestment, really. All he's doing is investing in his training. At this point, he's investing in recovery. I would probably buy a jacuzzi as well, and I'm not a fighter. At least he can justify it as a work expense almost. I would just buy one because I like them.
The last thing that I bought with my first million, it was a condo. $500,000, but I needed to do renovation in it, and it cost me about 100k. Condo plus renovation, $600,000. So I'm really into dinosaur fossil. I love paleontology, and I bought for, I would say, $20,000. Megalodon tooth, mosasaurs, jaw, Tyrannosaurus rex, all kinds of different animals that used to live a long time ago. At the time I was studying, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
So he spent 600k on his apartment. I don't know if it's this one that he's sitting in just now, but investing in property, investing in real estate, it tends to be a good investment. So he's made $1 million and he's wasted almost none of it. 30k for his friends who didn't pay him back, and fossils, which, if that's what he enjoys, then it's nice to have the money to invest in what you enjoy.
But now I know that if I would not be a fighter, I would be a paleontologist, and I would probably be on the field digging. And paleontology, I love it because you learn about the past, and if you learn about the past, you can understand the present better and predict the future. Ferraz, my head coach, gave me another megalodon tooth, a big one. It was my favorite fossil that I have, because it represents the alpha predator, the GOAT predator of all time. That tooth that I have, at one point I was fixing my sound system. It made a lot of noise and it vibrated, and my tooth fell on the floor and broke. But I still have it today. I can't glue it, it shatters in pieces. Dinosaur fossil, 20k.
So he spent as much on dinosaur fossils as he did on his car, and he spent more giving money to his friends, which he never got back, than he did on his own hobby. Very telling of his character.
When you start making money in combat sport, you have to keep in mind that it's very hard to reach the top, but it's very easy to go back down. Make sure to invest on yourself, because if you don't get better, the game will catch up to you. So you need to make sure that you invest on yourself, get new knowledge, make sure you have treatment in order to recuperate better. So invest this thing on yourself. If I would have go back in time and tell the kid that one day I will become world champion in mixed martial art, I think I will believe, because I always knew that I had all the tools. I worked very hard, and also I was very lucky because I had the chance to meet incredible mentors, and the stars were all aligned for me. When a door opened to me, I was getting in. If the door were all closed, I was breaking in to create my own opportunity. I grew up in Saint-Isidore, Quebec, Canada, and the mayor of the city called me and says that this coming summer will be the inauguration of a statue of me in fighting pose that they will put in the middle of the center of the city. So it's a great honor for me. Like Rocky Balboa, but in the small town of Saint-Isidore. That's what it will be like. Thank you, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So the first point I want to make on this video is, being a UFC fan, I'm used to seeing GSP with a shaved head, and I still find it strange that he has hair now. If you go on Google and you search Georges St-Pierre, you're only going to get photos of a man with a shaved head. So the fact he has this blonde spiky hair is really strange. But the real point to take from that video is what a nice guy GSP is. He's made $1 million, and other than buying himself a house, he's spent none of it on luxury things that aren't necessary. He's prioritised paying his parents' debts off, giving his family gifts, helping his sister through college, giving money to friends and never receiving it back. And buying the house as well is probably a good investment. I don't know what the property market's like in Montreal, but I would imagine it's stable enough that the money was safe. Now obviously, GSP being one of the most famous fighters in UFC history, he's probably made more than the first $1 million. But if that was the only million that he made, it would have been relatively safe in that property, and his parents' debts would have been paid off. So the money would have still been put to good use. And I'll be honest, if I was paid $1 million up front, I would probably flash it a little bit. I probably would spend at least 50, 60 grand on a car. And I probably would do the same as he did and spend a decent chunk of it on a property. But if you actually look at all the things that he spent the money on, I can't really see where he's went wrong, other than the 30k on his friends that didn't pay him back. Even the 200k on travelling, it's not just travelling for going on holiday. He's reinvesting into himself so he can train in jiu-jitsu, he can train boxing, he can train Muay Thai. I've not watched that many of these My First Million videos, but I would go out on a limb and say this is one of the best ways that someone spent their first million on these videos. So as usual, let's get a look through the comments and see if anybody shares the same opinions as me. They often don't. This is by far the smartest $1 million spent on this show. Well, I stand corrected. It's literally what I just said. Notice how when he made it big, he took care of all the people who supported him before he spent anything on himself. And the money he did spend on himself was to make him a better athlete. GSP is a rare type of person and has what young fighters should strive for. It's a very good point. You make $1 million, it's very easy to get caught up in the flashy lifestyle of other people making millions. I would imagine an aspiring young fighter could see someone like Conor McGregor as an example. Great fighter, but he spends a lot of money. He invests a lot of money and he makes a lot of money. But it's nice to see another fighter saying to pay your taxes, invest your money, invest in yourself, help your friends and family out. There's no bravado or flashiness to GSP's spending. Bruh, like 90% of his first million was spent on his family. I need George as a relative ASAP. So I understand the sentiment here, but the maths is a little bit off. He spent 50k on his parents' debt, 40k on his parents' cars, 10k on his sister's degree, and 50k on family gifts. That's 150k. That is not 90% of $1 million, but I do see the point. He did spend a considerable amount on his family and friends before he spent any money on himself. So it looks like all the comments are pretty similar. Everyone is a big fan of GSP, talking about how nice he is and how well he spent the first $1 million. I was hoping for some controversial comments, but there is none. I can't see any. So I think we'll call it a day on this video. If there are any aspiring MMA fighters watching this video, make sure you take some notes from what GSP did with his first $1 million. If you make $1 million, do the same. Minus the fossils maybe. Maybe spend on something you like. And if you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and hit the big red button to subscribe. 54% of viewers in the last 28 days are not subscribed. So let's try and bring that number down a bit and bring the subscribers up. And I will see you on Monday.